Okay, if everyone's ready, I'll start my speech. Um, just a couple of words that you might want to know. Energy sufficiency, I think, is la sobriété énergétique, and energy retrofit is rénovation énergétique. And without further ado, I'll start. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honoured to have the opportunity to address this Green Energy Summit today and to be part of this diverse movement made up of people from all backgrounds and all walks of life who have decided to come together to take action and change our planet for the better. We all know how the energy choices made in the past have shaped our planet for the worse, and we're all too aware of our current reliance on oil. Aside from the devastating climate and health effects of this, the geopolitical consequences of relying on energy sources from other countries cannot be underestimated. We have seen only recently how Saudi Arabia has once again held the world to ransom by threatening to flood the oil market, and how it has used this strategy time and time again to assert its dominance and to achieve its distasteful political goals. We have seen how far Western democracies are prepared to go in the scramble for oil, with little regard for the lives of civilians. It has been said that a nation which cannot feed itself can never be truly free, but nor can a nation which is dependent on others for its energy supply. But I'm not here today to bring more gloom and doom to the table. I'm here to point to a solution and to demonstrate that it is possible to switch to 100% renewable energy and that we can achieve this by 2050. To show you just how achievable this is, I'm going to present a scenario developed by scientists and energy experts belonging to the French organisation Negawatt, which has been developing alternative energy solutions for 20 years, based on a three-pillar approach of energy sufficiency, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. This scenario relates specifically to France, but there's nothing to prevent it from being used in other countries to bring about their energy transformation too. So here we have the three pillars of the Negawatt scenario, which I'll explain briefly. So we have energy sufficiency, which not everyone will have heard of, but it can be defined as a state in which people's basic needs for energy are met equitably and ecological limits are respected. Energy sufficiency focuses on prioritizing essential needs and reducing wasteful use and excessive consumption. This can take many forms, from manufacturing less packaging for goods to encouraging the use of public transport to shortening agricultural supply chains. Secondly, we have energy efficiency, and this refers to measures which can be taken to make the same amount of energy go further. I'm sure we've all heard of the energy-saving light bulb, and most of us probably even have them in our houses. Other examples of these measures are insulating houses so that they require less heating and improving the performance of appliances and vehicles. And finally, energy, I'm sure we don't require an explanation of that, but in the specific context, it refers to energy collected from naturally replenished resources, so energy flows rather than finite resources. The Negawatt scenario addresses four sectors of the economy which consume the most energy: buildings, transport, industry, and agriculture. And I'm now going to go through these different sectors in the same order that they're set out in the scenario. So first we have buildings. In France, buildings account for more than 40% of energy consumption, and almost a third of this stems from heating homes built before 1975. We can see that there's a lot of room for improvement. The main priority in the Negawatt scenario is to carry out deep energy retrofit on all existing buildings, which, if we are to reach the aim of 100% renewable energy by 2050, we would need to renovate 780,000 homes and 27 million metres squared of tertiary sector space per year. Of course, this would require significant investment, up to 50 billion per year, in fact, which may seem like a huge figure, but on the upside, this would create almost 500,000 non-outsourceable jobs, and once completed would allow several billion euros of savings to be made per year. Alongside these measures, sources of heating would be used which move away from fossil fuels and nuclear energy, such as heat pumps and wood from sustainably managed forests. New regulations will be implemented in the construction sector to prioritise the rehabilitation of pre-existing buildings in the housing and tertiary sectors rather than building new ones. Also, with the aim to reduce the number of detached houses built because these consume much more energy than other types of housing, and to make new buildings low energy. and also to ensure that new buildings use low embodied energy construction materials such as wood and unbaked earth. Now, using earth in construction may sound like a step back to the Stone Age, but you might be surprised to know that some of the oldest buildings on the planet are made from earth, and the fact that they're still around just proves their durability. For example, here we can see the Great Mosque of Djenné in Mali, which is 100% built from earth. And we can also see how we can use baked earth in modern architecture to create environmentally friendly and attractive buildings. Earth is an 100% eco-friendly building material, which is not only strong and resistant, but it also acts as a natural air conditioner, as it retains heat in cold weather and keeps the interior of buildings cool in warm weather. The second sector which the scenario addresses is transport, and many of you will know that this currently represents the main source of greenhouse gas emissions. The negawatt scenario outlines a number of energy sufficiency measures to reduce unnecessary journeys. For example, better cycling infrastructure, dedicated car sharing zones, and public transport lanes. And those who are able to could also work from home for part of the week to cut down on unnecessary journeys. Many of us will have realised during this COVID-19 pandemic that we don't actually need to go into work every day. And studies have shown that working from home for 2 days per week reduces our individual carbon footprint by an average of 10%. The other main action in this sector is to move away from oil-powered vehicles. The scenario sets the objective of 75% of vehicles powered by renewable gas and 25% by electricity from renewable sources by 2050. This would also apply to heavy goods vehicles used for goods transport, although where possible, freight would travel by rail or water rather than by road. Renewable gas also plays a large role in the future of transport as depicted by the scenario, and this is a zero waste solution as it can be obtained from agricultural waste such as crop residue and manure, as well as sewage and industrial waste. This waste is then transformed in a complex biological and chemical process known as anaerobic digestion, which produces a gas mainly composed of methane. Methane is a very clean source of hydrocarbon fuel, and it can be used to power vehicles and machinery, so it's a good alternative to fossil fuels. The next sector, industry, is the only sector which has managed to reduce its energy consumption in France over recent years. But it's not all good news because this is partially due to the outsourcing of supply chains to countries where labour is cheaper. The negawatt scenario puts great emphasis on measures to reduce the production of packaging, such as reuse and recycling. And in fact, we're often not fully aware of just how much energy we can save through recycling. For example, every tonne of plastic recycled allows us to save 670 kilograms of crude oil, 570 kilograms of natural gas, and the equivalent of 1.5 years of the average person's energy consumption. The scenario also proposes that wherever possible, glass and plastic packaging should be made returnable, and that non-recyclable packaging should be substituted for natural materials. And there's currently some very interesting research going on, seeing how we can use mushrooms and plant fibres to create biodegradable packaging. And this is also already being used by some companies such as Veuve Clicquot, which makes some of its packaging out of potato starch and grapes of all things. There would also be new regulations brought in to extend the statutory warranty period of equipment such as household appliances in order to reduce waste and reduce demand for new appliances. And there will be measures put in place to make it compulsory to provide information on the origin of materials and semi-finished products so that consumers could be better informed about the energy consumption and environmental impact involved. The final sector is agriculture, which I won't go into in any great depth today as it really requires its own PowerPoint, and we can only really scratch the surface of this huge issue in the time allocated. But the general principle set out in the scenario is to maintain production at current levels, because we obviously all need to eat, but to establish a new balance between the production of food for human and animal consumption, the production of energy and raw materials, and the conservation of ecosystems and biodiversity. The aim is to achieve a less wasteful system which uses fewer artificial inputs and is able to recycle byproducts such as manure into energy which can then in turn be used in other sectors. Shortening supply chains also allows considerable energy savings to be made, as not only does this reduce the amount of energy used in transportation, but also the amount of energy used in manufacturing packaging. Because if food travels a shorter distance to its final destination, then it needs less packaging to protect it. I'd now like to show you a graph so you can visualize the energy savings which would be made if we were to apply this scenario, and how all energy required could indeed be obtained from renewable sources by 2050. So here you can see that we have a top layer in orange and yellow, which represents the energy sufficiency and efficiency measures which will be implemented under the scenario. And this alone would allow us to cut our energy consumption by almost half. You can see here at the bottom of the graph the current energy production methods used. So we have a lot of energy coming from fossil and nuclear energy, and this will be phased out, as we can see, by the year 2050. Over time, of course, because it's not a question of just stopping using oil, gas and uranium tomorrow. No, we don't want to see a complete disruption of society, but it's a question of phasing it out gradually. We can see, if we look at the graph, that the main sources of renewable energy as we approach 2050 would be bioenergy from the anaerobic digestion of waste, as I described earlier, and also renewable electric energy, which comes mainly from wind and solar power, as described by the scenario. And these are currently only deployed on a very small scale in France, so there's huge untapped potential here. This scenario shows us that it is possible to phase out fossil fuels by 2050, and the only thing preventing this from happening is the lack of political will to achieve this. Of course, the current situation suits many of our political leaders all too well, and we know the role that fossil fuel lobbies play in decisions made at national and supranational level. Our leaders are failing to address this situation with the urgency required, so it's up to us as activists and citizens to take action, equipped with this scenario and safe in the knowledge that not only are our demands feasible, but they're possibly the only way to ensure our future and that of generations to come. Thank you for your attention.